And then the other thing was just kind of giving the word wealth a brand new definition. It's not having a bunch of money in the bank account per his definition. It was having enough money coming in passively each month to cover your expenses, your livelihood. And I was like, okay, well, I never want to be where I'm at right now again. Let's do this differently. And so that was my goal. I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and incorporate this rat race escape formula, get my passive income as high as I can and my expenses as low as I can. And let's escape this rat race thing. It was like a game. And I did it in 3.5 years. And I was financially free. And, now having experienced the two definitions of wealth in the music business, having a bunch of money in the bank, but still having to go to work every day.
Welcome, fellow entrepreneurs and goal-getters, to Entrepreneurial Elevation, Unleashing Greatness Within, with myself, your host, Kelley Beveridge, and my guest today, Matt. And I apologize ahead of time if I pronounce your last name wrong, Matt. That's what I was just going to ask you. Is it Theriault? Is that correct?
You're from Canada. You should know how to pronounce this. It's French-Canadian, but it's Theriault, rhymes with stereo.
Oh my gosh, I really got that wrong. Yeah, totally.
Everybody does, so don't worry about it.
You know what? When we had the opportunity to take French in school, I chose phys ed. I chose like outdoor ed and things like that. So yeah, that's where I went wrong in that scenario.
Right. I mean, the Americans get it wrong all the time. About 50% of the Canadians will get it right.
That's so funny. So excited to have you here. We were just chatting. Matt actually has had his own podcast for 15 years, back when people didn't even know what podcasting was. So he's seasoned, just like already a super friendly, great guy. He's from Southern California, residing in Las Vegas. You have a really interesting background, Matt. So you were USMC Dessert Storm Veteran. So thank you for that. You have enjoyed 15 successful years in the music business as a record producer and label owner before it all came crashing down. And you went from being a multimillionaire, a 7-figure earner, to bagging groceries at $7 an hour. And we're going to talk about that because I think there's going to be a lot of lessons there. Yet since you've rebuilt yourself and now you're an entrepreneur and success coach who has the belief, which I do as well, that passive income is where the average person has a real chance at creating wealth. And we're going to talk about that and what passive income is and why it can help us get our goals and dreams and be a big part of our business and the system you have in place. So just welcome. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And so I want to start with your journey of having created success and then it falling apart and then rebuilding it. So I'm just curious, and I'm sure there was a lot of hard parts, but what was the hardest part from going from being very successful to then all of a sudden finding yourself like bagging groceries? I feel like there's a story in itself with this.
100%. It's such a good story. I wrote a book about it called Do Over. And it was half personal development, half autobiographical, just taking what I had learned in the hard lessons I learned in the music industry as an entrepreneur, having lost it all, and then rebuilding it in the real estate industry. I would say I've never been asked the question that way, so I don't have a prepared answer. But the first thing that actually came to mind, and maybe something will come to mind later, but the first thing that came to mind was that first go around. It just happened. It wasn't like I had this ambition and I set goals and I had to have daily habits and a routine and discipline and had to invest in myself and train and educate. I just was very fortunate that I was good at programming a little drum machine and people liked what they heard and they paid me money for it. And that started very early, like when I was 17 years old and I was still just getting out of high school. And I got someone gave me $1,000. And at the time I was just like, oh my God, I was washing golf carts at the time. It'd take me like 2 months to make that much money. Right. And someone like doing something I love. So I think one of the hardest things that happened is when the digital download came along. I don't know if you remember Napster. People just stopped buying records. They stopped walking into music stores and buying stuff and just staying home and downloading it for free. And that put us out of business in 6 very fast months. And At the time it was happening, I mean, in hindsight, it's crystal clear, but when it was happening, no one was like, what's going on? This is this industry that's been around for decades and it's produced all kinds of wealth. And we were doing very well ourselves. And all of a sudden it just disappeared, just like vanished. And we're just kind of scratching our head. And it was like, wow. And so I think it was just the hardest part was like seemingly having the rug pulled out from under you and not seeing who did it and not knowing who did it. Right.
Yeah, and not expecting it or anticipating it.
Exactly. Right now, like when you hear a new technology, like you hear crypto or you hear AI and you're just like, okay, is this something I should get ready for? You know what I mean? But that back then it was like the last time we had any sort of disruption like that was maybe the car taking over the horse. Right.
Literally.
Yeah. That just wasn't a common thing that we thought about or prepared for. And social media wasn't what it is right now. I remember I was so resistant to even get a website because it was like $15,000 to pay someone to build a website for you that looked like a piece of junk when it was all done compared to today's technology and look. So we weren't even internet focused. So
Yeah.
I think that was the hardest part. It was just like, holy cow, what now? At 34 years old, starting life over from scratch because I had done this since I was in high school. And so I had no credentials. I had no certificates or I had no job history. I had no references, right? And to go out there into the job world, because I had to eat, I still liked food. And that was like a fish out of water, just in a whole new space of totally bewildered.
Oh my gosh. I can definitely see how that would be the case, right? And here you are, extremely successful through following your passion, doing what you love, figuring it out as you go, and being it be the only thing that you know. And then due to circumstances outside your control, you find yourself in a totally, completely different stage of life. And so I'm curious, how did that impact your identity? Like by that time, did you have the identity of being a successful businessman? And then all of a sudden you're like, poof, like you said, it wasn't like it was a slow burn where you're coming to terms with it. It happened really quickly. How did that impact your identity and your belief in yourself? And then what did you do to start to move through it and move towards something different?
When it happened, I was very upset at the world. And when it seemingly wasn't my fault. So I was mad at the world. I pointed the finger at everybody and everything and was very bitter. And after a few weird run-ins with different types of jobs, I worked as a temp because I could type really fast. That was like my big skill I was bringing up to the civilian world from the music business. And I remember I was in testing for the temp agency and they gave me the test and I don't know, the little 21-year-old girl came around. Oh, wow, you're fast. We have all kinds of work for you. Like she was like patting me on the head. Like, you're such a good boy. Look how good you did. And I remember how small I felt and how did I get here? And I did a little bit of that. And right at that moment, the grocery store union went on strike. And so I crossed the picket line and I was able to get $22 an hour at the grocery store. And that was like, okay, this is good money now. Right?
Yeah.
Until you get your first paycheck and you're like, why is it there's so many people taking money out of my paycheck before I even get it? I don't know if you guys have FICA up there, but FICA is somebody that takes your taxes out before you even get to see your money. And so that was tough because I'm 34 years old and I'm taking my lunch break with 16-year-olds because we're doing the same job. We're bagging groceries together, pushing shopping carts. And so I did that for about 6 months and just kind of woke up one day like, wow, that went by really fast. And it doesn't look like anyone is coming to save me. It's like there was no shortage of shoulders to cry on, but there was a huge shortage of help or direction and advice because I came from a family that doesn't have a single entrepreneur in it. They're all civil servants, police officers, firefighters, some aerospace engineers that worked for the government, very traditional, conservative family values, conservative financial values, and conservative just how you go about life. Let's work for somebody for 40 years and grab your pension at the end. And so I just had nobody to look up to or anything. And so I'd had to find my way. And who knows, I might still even be there if they were on strike still. But the strike came to an end. And I remember the grocery store manager, who was also 34 years old. We were the same age. And he said, hey, Matt, you're doing a great job. You're one of the greatest employees that we got. We'd love to keep you, but now the strike's over. So now you got to go union. And so you have to start at the bottom, and that's at $7 an hour. And I was like, whoa, this $22 an hour sucks. This $7 would not be any better. But I got to work 3 weeks to get the same as I get as 1 week. And I was like, yep. So rather depressed. And he could tell we had a lot in common because we were the same age.
Mm-hmm.
And he had said, Matt, if you really want to get your money back, it's probably going to be through real estate. Let me show you what I've done. So he took me to the office and he had this photo album. Do you remember photo albums?
I do. And I remember 8-tracks and tapes and
Right.
CDs.
We used to open books and turn pages to look at pictures, not scroll through them, swiping in our phone. But since he had been there, he'd been able to acquire a couple apartment buildings. And he said, I'm going to be done in 2 years. I'll have 20 years here. I'll be vested 70% into my salary for the rest of my life for my retirement. So I'm retiring in 2 years. I'm going to take 70% of my salary for the rest of my life. But these apartment buildings already exceed what that's going to be. And I was just like, oh, and he said these words to me, and I've said them a million times. They've been the foundation of my whole business ever since. But he said, and you had it really close, so you said it in the intro, but he said, real estate is the final frontier where the average person has a legitimate shot at creating real wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And after what I've gone through, I was like, who am I to look outside of the final frontier? Let's not take any chances because I need this to work. And then when he said the average person, at that time in my life, I was feeling far below average.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said real wealth. I was like, okay. And so I went, and long story short, I went to what I thought I was supposed to do is I became a real estate agent. And it took me a few years before I figured out, okay, if real estate is where all the money's at, I'm sitting on the wrong side of the desk. Because I had a couple investor clients and I got to compare their commission or my commissions to their profits. And I was like, I'd rather have the profits. And somewhere along the line, someone introduced me to a little book. You might want to write this down. No one ever heard of it, called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Have you heard of this book? And just like for so many people, it's so transformational for me. But it taught me two specific things that kind of changed everything. The first one was just this concept of passive income.
Mm.
I can take the word passive, I can take the word income, I can put them together and figure out what it means. But to pursue it as an intention, that was a whole wild new concept for me. And then the other thing was just giving the word wealth a brand new definition. It's not having a bunch of money in the bank account per that his definition. It was having enough money coming in passively each month to cover your expenses, your livelihood. And I was like, okay, I never want to be where I'm at right now again. Let's do this differently. And so that was my goal. I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and incorporate this rat race escape formula, get my passive income as high as I can and my expenses as low as I can. And let's escape this rat race thing. It was like a game. And I did it in 3.5 years. And I was financially free. Now, having experienced the two definitions of wealth in the music business, having a bunch of money in the bank, but still having to go to work every day. And now not having really any money in the bank. I wasn't rich by anybody's standards, but I didn't have to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I liked that one better.
Yeah, I love what you're sharing. Thanks for sharing your whole journey. Well, in a short period of time, but you're reading in between the lines, right? Obviously, things happen for a reason, and you coming across the space you were in to learn about passive income. You're sitting here speaking about average person. And I believe as entrepreneurs, and I have a desire for freedom. I think most people have a desire for freedom, yet we attach it to wealth. And usually what in most people's minds is unattainable, right? This large, insane sum of money. And I love that what you're sharing, for me, it like speaks volumes to everybody can have wealth. Everybody, the average person, everybody on here listening can have wealth. Because if you shift your perspective of it, that it's like you shared, passive money coming in to cover your livelihood, where you actually don't have to go and work, and then you have time freedom to do the things that you want to do and to live your values and your lifestyle. And yes, you can constantly increase the amount of money in your bank account when you do that. But I love just even that perspective shift in itself, because you use the word intentional. It will cause myself or people to start doing things differently, intentionally, to chip away at the passive income. And it makes it way more, in my mind anyways, doable. Like it makes it more, okay, I could do that. It's not so out there that I don't even believe it's possible for me. And I love that. What did you start to do? Let's talk about this. Okay, so you start to have this vision for passive income and start to be intentional with it. What did you start to actually do you said it took 3 years. So tell us about what happened in that 3 years.
For sure. The book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it uses real estate. It's not a real estate book, but it uses it as the financial vehicle right? And in the beginning, it was a real estate play for me. Like, I'm just doing real estate, not because I'm passionate about it, because I want the money back. And this is like where it's going to happen. But not buying properties to flip them for cash. It was buying properties to hold on to them for the cash flow. And that was the big distinction right there. And that can be a really tough decision all the time, because I have this house under contract. Do I flip it and make $30,000, or do I hold on to it and make $300 a month?
Hello, everybody. Hopping on to share with you, being that it is the beginning of the new year, that what a great time to really take a look and reassess and reevaluate where we're at in our life, both personally and professionally, and gaining clarity around the things that we say that we want. And the thing I always like to say is, if you don't know what you want, what are the chances of getting it? And so I have created a online course that I want to make accessible to everybody, called the Success Achievement Blueprint, Becoming a Great Goal Achiever. And it will guide you in getting clear on your vision and your values, and aligning both of those to goals and intentions and things that you really have a heart's desire for and are internally inspired to be in action towards. It will set you up to win, to not only set goals, yet learn how to achieve them, because that really is why we set goals in the first place, right? Gives us direction towards the things that we desire, so we can constantly work on attracting and manifesting and creating more things in our life to become and live an abundant life. And obviously, a big part of that is who is important for you to become along that journey. And so the course helps you set goals. It helps you learn what you need to do to implement and achieve the goals, how to create your schedule around your values and the things that really matter to you, so you actually free up mental time and mental clutter and actual time. And it will really just give you the tools and the awareness tools, the mindset tools, and the business tools, and the actual tools just to support you in getting your goals and staying the course. And I like to say what my mentor always used to say and tell me is that success is forward progress towards your worthy goals. And that's really why I designed this course. And so look in the show notes. There's a link for you to access it. It is years and years and years of experience that I have had for myself, investing in courses and classes, and actually being out in life, setting goals and achieving goals, and what I've went through. And so there's a lot of value jam-packed into this course, and I'm offering it at 67 Canadian dollars. And the reason why it's at such a low price is not because of the content or the value. It's because I truly have a desire to support people in knowing what they want and where they're going and by when and why, so that you can step into that and become the best version of yourself to achieve it. And that really is a big mission in my life. So I want to make this course available to everybody. And the last thing I want to share is I actually created this course a few years ago during COVID, while I was in lockdown in South Africa. I couldn't leave the house. I was working on my own business, and I thought, what else can I do? And so I created this course in this little corner in the room that I was in, because I didn't actually have Wi-Fi. I had to borrow my neighbors, and I was stuck in the country. We couldn't leave. We couldn't fly out. We weren't allowed to leave the apartment. And I used that time to take a lot of my knowledge and understanding around setting and achieving goals, and I channeled it into a course. And I now am in a space in my life where I want to share it and promote it and have it available to you. So please check it out. Even if you know how to set goals, it's nice to have somebody guide you through and get really crystal clear on what are you focusing on this year, with some new tools in your tool belt to accelerate that growth and attract more of what you deserve into your life. And so just thank you so much. And that is my gift to you, $67. Check it out below. And I hope that I can just be a part of your journey in a positive way. And best of luck to you for the year of 2025.
That's a really tough decision, right? And because you want that $30,000, because that's going to move the needle in your life. That's going to be, you'll be able to do some things with 30 grand. With $300 a month, and maybe that's just especially today, maybe that's just an extra night out with the spouse for dinner once a month. Yeah, that's it. You're done. Like, real estate wealth is gone.
Yeah.
But you're never going to get to that passive income goal that's covering your expenses unless you get that first one. And I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people, is they just look at it, rather have the 30 grand. But the more 30 grands you take, the further away you get, the slower you're getting from your financial freedom. Because if you wanted to, say you needed to live off of $10,000 a month, say that was your number, and you might not be wealthy, but you'd cover all of your expenses. So you have two paths. You can pursue the $10,000 a month, or in today's market, you try and save $2.5 million. Which one sounds more doable? Right?
Yeah.
And so when you put that in the context of real estate, it's like the difference between 80 transactions and 20. I got to work so much harder to save the cash so it'll produce the cash flow, when I could just hold on to the asset that produces the cash flow. They're both hard work, but you just get to choose how long do you want to work hard. And so I made a big investment in myself and my education, which I think is the first place anyone should invest money, is in themselves and increase their earning potential. And I just learned how to buy houses without really any significant money. And you hear about that, and it seems like the unicorn in the woods to a lot of people. But if you're pursuing the right types of properties, it's very doable. You just got to know where to look. You need a little bit of guidance. And once you get the first one, you're done. You're like, oh, that's it? That's how this works? Oh, geez. It was such a mystery for me for so long. And so I just did that. And so my goal was to hold as many houses as I could. And in 3.5 years, I was able to get the income from those houses to exceed my monthly expenses.
I love it. I love it. It's like being willing to play the long game, starting with step one, investing in yourself, getting your first house. It always just starts with the first, right?
Yeah.
Get your first house, which usually seems the hardest. And then you get your second, and it gets easier, and your third, and then it becomes easier and easier. And so you mentioned this because I'm like, oh, I'm curious. This is why I like my podcast, because I could always ask things I want to know too. It's like a learning playground
to make myself smarter. But,
So you talked about investing money into learning how to buy houses, and it can start to become a simple formula. It doesn't need to be as big and scary and complicated. Can you share some guidance and tips? And maybe this is where your business system comes into play. Yeah, if you're talking to somebody like myself who doesn't have any experience in this kind of industry and or way to make money, where would I even start? Where do I begin? And then what steps do I start to put into place?
I think the last statistics they had here in the US, 100% of all real estate that was sold, 93% involved a real estate agent and were classified as people that want to sell. 7% were sold off market by people that needed to sell. So the first step is recognizing that there's people out there that got bigger fish to fry than getting full price for their house. They got bigger problems. They need their money. They need it fast. And so like they're behind on their property taxes, or they're dealing with the death in the family, or they're going through divorce, or they're going through a job loss, or their mortgage, it adjusted on them and now they can't afford to pay it. And now they're behind, and now they're going to lose their house. So they would rather get something instead of nothing. And so you're looking for problems. So you're really positioning yourself as a problem solver. And what I look at how we do is we exchange equity for peace of mind. And there's people out there just in a really bad place in life. We don't meet too many people that are on winning streaks. And it's temporary. Life comes along and kicks us all in the teeth every once in a while. And you might have to do something a little bit, I don't know, outlandish per other people's standards. But to the people that are in the situation, they're so grateful and thankful. Like, oh my gosh, thank God I have the house. Thank God there's some money left to get. Thank God I can get it by the end of the week. And so once you understand that dynamic and that exists out there, now you just need to know how to go look for them.
Yeah.
So in the US, everything here is essentially public record in almost every state. So if you get a notice of default filed by a bank, that becomes a public record. And those records are free. So now everybody in the neighborhood that's struggling with their mortgage, and you send them a letter, you send them a text message. Hey, are you interested in selling this house? Great. How much would you like to get for it? If I paid all the closing costs and there were no real estate agent commissions, what's the lowest price you'd be willing to take? And whatever they say, it's a yes or a no. That's just how simple it is.
Yeah.
And what I got really good at was, and maybe the next question is, where do you get the money if they say yes, right?
That's what I just wrote down to ask you.
Yeah, it's so
Wasn't
easy. You
it?
just say yes and you walk away with a free house. No, although that happens all the time, free houses. Um, they've got a mortgage on it, and they're like, if you could just take over the payment so the bank stops calling me, you can have the house.
Mhm.
I'd like to preserve my credit score and be able to buy again. I don't want to go into foreclosure. I don't want to have that mark on my credit record. A lot of that means a lot to a lot of people. Make the payments, please, and you can have it. So I've got a bunch of those. So it's like you'll find the house and the money came right along with it. The other way is making payments to sellers over time. So if the house is worth $500,000 and they need 300 cash, so you got this huge discount. Well, what if I gave you 400 cash and just made monthly payments to you? I'll give you $2,000 a month until the thing's paid off. And for some people, that's a great solution. And now all of a sudden I got a house for only $2,000 a month with no money down. So those are just a couple ideas of how you can do it. Because you're only limited really by your own creativity. If there's not a bank and an agent involved, as long as the buyer and the seller agree, pretty much anything goes.
I just love what you just shared. You're only limited by your own creativity. And because as you're speaking, I'm thinking, especially when you first started this process, I'm sure like all of a sudden you're faced with $7 an hour after having insane amounts of cash. And for most people, it's, oh, the mindset goes to the limitations, right? Like, it's not possible. How am I supposed to do that? I don't have money. You didn't hear me. My situation's really bad right now. Like all of these scenarios, yet there is infinite solutions if you look for them, right? And so I'm curious as you're speaking, and I love the practical examples you're giving. Yet I would also like to know, like, for you specifically, what was the shift you had to have in your mindset so that you became open to the opportunity and started looking for the solutions and using your creativity so that you weren't like the thing that was in the way of this having even been what you chose to do?
The very first person that held my hand through my first transaction taught me a lot. And he had a lot of little famous quotes that he would say along the way. And the first one was, we're not going to overthink anything. We're not going to overanalyze. We're not going to get ready. We're just going to move at the speed of instruction, was his whole thing. You just have to move faster than your doubts. He'd say those types of things, and you're doubting, you're not moving fast enough. Like you got to keep going, keep going, keep going. So that was like a big mindset thing. And then as far as the real estate goes, it was like, okay, we're just going to travel as far as we can see. And when we get there, we're going to see further. Like, all right, let's go. And it was just walking with faith. And I was fortunate to have a great person that walked along, and I've been able to pay that forward so many times now. And yet Martin Luther King has a version of that where he says, you don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. Landing on step 3 is much easier if you're starting from step 2. But so many people, they just need to know what's on step 10 before they'll even take the first step. They're terrified. And so he just walked me through. He said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go find the deal. So he had me drive up and down the street. Let's just focus on driving up and down the street and find a house that fits our criteria. We found a house that fits the criteria. Great. Now you're going to contact the seller and you're going to present them with an offer. And like, well, where am I going to get the money for this thing? What if they say yes? What are we going to do? Don't worry about that. Just get the offer accepted. So I got the offer accepted. And then it was like, I went back to him, okay, now smarty pants, what are we going to do? This is what you're going to do is you're going to take this to all the different networking events in your area. So I went to the Chamber of Commerce and the Elks Lodge and BNI and some different meetup groups and some real estate groups. But every one of those opportunities, you're given the opportunity, to stand up and introduce yourself. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is who I help. And here's how you can get in touch with me. And so we came up with a little thing like, hey, I show busy professionals how to build a real estate portfolio in their spare time because I'm talking to busy professionals in every place I go to. And I have this little property here and it's below market value and it's going to cash flow like this. And if you want some more information about it, just hit me up after the thing. I'll be happy to give you a flyer. So every time I introduce myself, that was my speech. And it doesn't take, you don't have to say that too many times before someone says, hey, I'd like that. So I didn't know you can sell a house without even owning it. You sell the contract. So that's how I did my first deal. Was I didn't have the money, but unless I had that property under contract, I had nothing. I didn't have anything to sell. But now, since I had a signed contract by a seller that had what we call equitable rights on the property, I can sell those equitable rights. And I got $26,000 for doing that. And I never even closed on the house. So that was like opened up where you don't need the money to get started in real estate. You might need it for expenses, right? You do some
Mhm.
marketing and maybe you're paying for a couple software so you have access to information, stuff like that. But you don't need money for the actual real estate itself,
Yeah.
right? And so that was like the opening of creativity, because I thought you had to go to a real estate agent, go get pre-qualified for a bank, have a big down payment, and then go through this whole process, and hopefully the property appraised, and then hopefully that the money would keep up their end of the bargain and close, and then you'd have the thing, and then you'd have this big giant expensive monthly mortgage every month. And that's how everyone thinks a house is bought, and that's why it seems that it's such a mystery. But I learned that was my first step of creative real estate.
Ugh, ugh, I love it because too, what you're sharing is like how often, and I'm guilty of this too, do I decide how something is going to come to play before I actually even really know? Like I pretend like I'm the expert and I have all the answers and I've never even taken a step.
Yeah.
And to your point, we don't know what we don't know until we're walking in action and faith and trusting that there will be solutions in all of this. And I love your story. I'm really curious because what I've realized too, and I'm curious where your business is at now in the sense of, are you still using the same strategy? Because I feel like a lot of times what entrepreneurs do, and I don't know what the right answer is, it's why I'm asking what you're doing. Yet what I feel I'm realizing more and more is that the reason why a lot of people don't scale or become successful is because they change their strategy. And it's like, you're doing this, it's working. So do you just keep adding more houses to your portfolio, or did you now go and start to invest in commercial buildings? Did you start to do something different because you had the confidence and the skill set, or do you do a bit of both? What are you up to now, and what's your guidance on that?
That's a really, really good question, because entrepreneurs, that's very much their tendency, right?
Big time.
If something works, great, let's go try something else, right?
Hmm.
Or let's go bigger, and let's go bigger faster, and let's do all of this other stuff. And that's just how we're wired. And so I did a lot of that and made a lot of mistakes. I've come back to the very much the basics. So I go out and look for these properties, and my intention is to hold every single one of them. But I know that I'm going to come across a lot that I don't want to hold, or for some reason I can't hold this one. Then I just know that I can sell the contract to somebody else that can. So that's my whole thing, is I'm just finding the deal. I get under contract, and then I conduct my due diligence, and then I run the numbers. Then I see if this is going to work for me in my own portfolio. And if it doesn't, then I go find somebody else where it will. And I've kept it really simple like that. And yes, you just do it over and over and over again. And I've heard that, and it took me, gosh, I'm 55 now. And so this is 20 years now, 20 years in real estate in some capacity. And gosh, looking back, I wish I would have done this so much sooner. I think I'd be so much further. I'm doing fine, but I would have been so much further. I wasted so much time chasing all the shiny objects. It's like we all do. Warren Buffett says the best investing is boring investing. I heard Alex Hormozy just say recently, you should get so good at your business that it becomes boring before you ever think about doing anything else.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow. And so I heard those a little bit too late in life, but not too late. So I've been able to embrace that. But I just think of how different it could have been if I did that earlier.
Yeah, no, and that's why I was curious about that question because I'm learning it as well, and my mentor ingrained it into me, and I think sometimes we're meant to hear it when we hear it, and we've got to.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it is the entrepreneurial brain is kind of like, okay, now what next? What's next?
Mhm.
And it's like, no, be willing to do something. And that's why that whole concept of really through repetition is where the skill's going to come in and the results are going to come in while you're playing the long game and being willing to surrender to that. I think it
Mhm.
is really important. And okay, so I'm curious, what would be, I have a few questions to wrap up. I want to know more where people can find you, but last question before that, what would you say would be 2 or 3 lessons? Like you've had quite the journey, right? You have a lot of experience. You've done some different things. You've had lots of success. You've had failure. What would you say would be 3 lessons that you've taken away from your journey so far?
I would say what's had the biggest impact on where I am today is my environment and who I spend my time with. So I
Mm.
think for anybody, I think you should be taught this like your senior year in high school. Be intentional on who you hang out with. Be intentional on creating your environment. We go through high school and we kind of come out as these dumb kids that fell victim and or succumbed to some level of peer pressure and did things that we knew weren't right or didn't want to do, or we look back and, oh, what an idiot I was. But when you get older, peer pressure works both ways. If you hang around the dodo birds, you're going to become a dodo bird, right? But you hang around successful people, and also all of a sudden you look around, you're like, oh, I'm the only one who's not succeeding. I better get off my ass. So I think that's a huge one. And if you, like me, and I didn't have that network when I ended up in the grocery store and I'm hanging around 16-year-olds, what kind of environment is that for me to succeed? And I didn't know about these things like masterminds and stuff like this, that you can just buy your way in. And there's a lot of very expensive ones. And I've found that I probably spend $100,000 a year on those type of networking opportunities. And yeah, I learned things from the guru, whoever's leading it, and all that kind of stuff. But nothing beats the people that I get to sit next to that can also afford that same group.
Yep.
That's where the real wealth is. That's where the real opportunities come from. So that would be the huge one. That's just a big one. And I would say maybe the second one kind of stems off of that is don't be afraid to treat yourself like an investment. If money is what you're striving for, or to be a really good business person, run a really good business and build your business up to where it becomes sellable and all that type of stuff, we're not born with that knowledge, right? You have to acquire it. And you can go through and by trial and error and do it the slow way, like so many people have. And I guess very much I have for the earliest part of my careers. But you can really collapse timeframes by just investing in yourself and going and paying for someone or paying for the education to learn how to do it. I think those would be the two things that come to mind. There's probably more. A third one doesn't pop out at me, but I'll give you the third one. This is a biggie. So I've always had these 3 books that I always gave all my credit to. It was Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. It was the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. And then it was The Slight Edge by, I think it's Jeff Olson. I think that's his name. The Slight Edge. So those 3 books, those books are great. The Dip by Seth Godin is really, really good. That's a really small book, easy read. But just about 6 years ago, I stumbled upon a book that I've been saying that for a decade up to that point. I said, oh, there's a new book I have to include. It's the most amazing one. Mike Michalowicz's Profit First. From an entrepreneurial perspective, to pay yourself first, that was life changing. And I'd heard of that book before. And I really thought, I saw the title. I was like, I know everything this book has to say. I get it. Pay yourself first. Okay. Nice book. And all I did was ever read the title, right? But it was a trip up to see my mom over Thanksgiving weekend. And I was in Los Angeles at the time, and she was in Southern Oregon. So it was like a 9-hour, 10-hour trip. I just popped that book in and drove it all the way there, and mind was blown.
Wow.
And I think every entrepreneur has to have that, particularly if you are struggling with finances, if you're struggling with consistent income, if you are always doing these peaks and valleys financially. You just have to listen to it. And the guy is a great orator. He's a great storyteller. So it's a very pleasurable listen. It's not a boring listen. And even like right now, just pay yourself first. And that could be the lesson, but it goes so much deeper and better. It's going to have a bigger impact, and you'll see it impact your finances so fast. So that would be the third thing.
Okay, I love it. And it might seem simple enough. Yeah, the truth is most entrepreneurs don't do that one thing. They pay everybody else. How many times do I hear people say, and I haven't even been able to pay myself this month? It's like, So even that shift in mindset changes things and creates abundance. So awesome. Thank you. I'm always looking for good books. So Matt, where can people find you? What do you have going on? So maybe just share a little bit about you. Where can people find you? What do you have coming on? This is going to air in the new year. So what do you have available for people? Because I know they're going to listen to this and their curiosity is going to be piqued.
Well, I just released my 4th book, and I think it'll be my last book a few months ago, called Escape. And you can go to Amazon and get it for $19, or you can go to myescapebook.com and you can get it for $4. But what I'll also give you for free is a course that Rich Dad, Mr. Robert Kiyosaki, asked me to make for his community. So it came full circle around. So I'll give you that course for free. He said I could give that away. You have to spend thousands of dollars to get it inside of his community, but you can have that for free. So that would be one place if you wanted to get more of what I've been talking about. Or just go on my epicrealestate.com on the website, Epic Real Estate on the podcast, Epic Real Estate on YouTube.
Awesome. And I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. Congrats on writing a 4th book. We got to be talking about that and all the books to get too. So that's awesome. Thank you. And then, okay, I know we've got to wrap up here. So I've got 3 kind of rapid fire last questions. What would you say would be your definition of success today?
I know I'm being successful when I don't wish I was doing something else.
I like that. I like that. Simple and true. What would be 3 tips you would give someone to unleash their inner greatness?
Probably very similar to, like, be intentional about creating your environment. Find yourself a mentor or a coach, even if you have to pay for it. And then pay yourself first.
Yeah, I like it. Cool. Okay, last question. With the listeners today, they're going to hop off here. And what would be one call to action you'd give them to do based on your message?
Identify a group somewhere that has already accomplished what you want to accomplish. And then do everything you can to provide value or be of service to that group, to where the law of reciprocity works in your favor.
I love that, because you didn't say go and be in there and do what they do or see what you can get from them. Give them value so the law of reciprocity works. I love that. What a great note to end on. Clearly you're doing that. Matt, thanks so much for just being here and sharing. And I really am intrigued with what you shared, and I can see a vision for it for sure. And just congrats to you and all your success. And thanks for being of service to other people and supporting other people and creating wealth for themselves as well. And the freedom of passive income, it's real and it's available to everybody.
Amen to that. And thank you very much, Kelley, for having me. Peace and blessings to you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tanya, and this is Julie, and we are the founders of Coach Corp, your all-in-one solution for building and scaling a successful coaching business.
At Coach Corp, we provide you with everything you need in one place. You can house your courses, manage memberships, run email campaigns, and create stunning websites and funnels, all with our easy-to-use platform.
And it's not just about the software. We offer built-in coaching and mentorship, helping you implement best practices from certified NLP practitioners and story brand coaches. And that's just scratching the surface of what's inside.
And that's why we're excited to sponsor the Entrepreneurial Elevation podcast with Kelley Beveridge. Kelley is a thought leader who inspires and elevates entrepreneurs worldwide.
We believe in the power of community and continuous learning, and this podcast is a fantastic resource for any coach looking to truly grow their practice.
So join us on this journey. Tune into the Entrepreneurial Elevation podcast for insights and inspiration, and visit Coach Corp to transform your coaching business today.
Coach Corp, your path to coaching success.